Hello, Dr. Vicki Peterson here. A new study came out in the Lancet that was looking at our rates of obesity and how it's affecting really rates of mortality. So what they found out was that first of all, there's a link between obesity and cancer such that 1/3 of all cancers are actually related to excess body weight. And obesity levels are now linked to more doctor's visits than even smoking, the side effects of smoking. Here in the U.S., we lead the obesity of all the countries in the world. We are the most obese nation, if you didn't know that. Not a proud moment for us, but it's the facts. 25% of Americans are either diabetic or pre-diabetic, and then heart disease and cancer, the leading causes of death, those two are the leading cause, diabetes a little bit lower, are all related to excess body weight. I have a bunch of stats here, so don't mind me as I look down. So in the study, they attributed 3.4 million deaths to excess body weight alone worldwide. From 1980, the study particularly was focusing from 1980 to 2013, and they found that obesity increased 28% in adults and almost 50% in children in that span of time. So obviously, great concern for everyone, but especially looking at how dramatically it's affecting our children. Obviously, what we're doing in addressing our weight is not working. We'll get to that in a moment. A few more stats. So as I mentioned, U.S. is #1. China and India closely follow us as far as our obesity numbers. And mostly what obesity is related to is highly processed food. So when highly processed food comes into a nation or country, then obesity rises. And those are our friends, you know, McDonald's, Subway, et cetera, et cetera. I recently got back from a lovely vacation, and I did a little blog on Paris and Parisians who are actually quite thin as a group, at least in that metropolitan area. And I just noticed that being there, but then when I got back, I did a little research, and sure enough, their obesity rates are much, much lower than here in the United States. And when it comes to fast food, there just really wasn't a lot of it. You certainly didn't see people eating on the street as they were walking along. You didn't see a lot of fast food. You know, Parisians and a lot of Europeans really value their eating. It's a pleasure time. It's not just about how fast can you put it in. And these are things that we can learn from, not only from relaxation and enjoying our food, but also from obesity standards, because we know that if you eat smaller portions, which that was definitely something I noticed in Europe, is that what we were served in restaurants was quite a bit smaller than what we received in the United States, probably a half to a third. In Paris, it was even small. I felt it was even smaller than half. In Italy, probably about half. So much, much smaller overall. And so not only a smaller portion, but they really linger over their meal. They tend to have their largest meal in the middle of the day, and they linger. They spend, you know, a couple of hours. Now you might be saying, as an American, who's got the time, you know? And I appreciate that, but you can take helpful hints from that, like starting out with smaller portions, eating slower, even if you're working or you're having a working lunch, you can still try to chew a little slower, chew more, put your fork down in between bites instead of just, you know, shoveling it in as fast as you can. Because it's very well known that the feedback mechanism that comes from the stomach and tells your brain you're full, there's a lag of about 20 minutes between the stomach feeling full and the brain knowing you're full. So if you're eating very rapidly, if you consume a big meal in less than 20 minutes, you won't even know that you overate, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, that was way too much, you see. But if you were eating slowly, you would know immediately when you had enough to eat. One thing in France, where, as I mentioned, their obesity rates are low, what they say is they stop eating when they're no longer hungry. There's a big difference between no longer hungry and so full you can barely move, you know. There's a very big difference. It's probably the difference between not being obese and obese. So I definitely wanted to bring up those points. Additionally, here in the U.S., you know, most of our crops are soy and corn. not only are they heavily GMO, but they're very starchy. I mean, soy actually is pretty high in protein, but by the time it's so refined, it's not really a good food, especially when it's so highly GMO, which really turns it more into a toxin. And then you have the toxic inflammatory effects, which of course create weight gain as well. Basics of hydration: we don't drink enough water, we're not hydrated enough. That makes a big difference as far as weight. I'm going to look down at my notes again. Oh, actually, before I do, artificial sweeteners. You know, we're told, oh, well, do the artificial sweetener because it doesn't have the calories. Research now shows us not only is it toxic, so you get the whole inflammatory effect, and it creates a lot of issues on the nervous system, but the body, when you're eating something sweet that has no calories, you'll actually crave those calories and get them from somewhere else. So it's been very well established that diet sweeteners do nothing for weight loss. Well, of course, more fruits and vegetables. We just don't consume enough of those. And you know, the idea that calories are all created equal is just very erroneous. You know, so if you had calories of fast food, which had chemicals and GMO and pesticides and all the horrible things that are in fast food, versus those same calories in real food of fruits and vegetables and nuts or olive oil or beans, or you know, something that was very pure, those same calories are not created equal. They're not creating equal value or problems in the human body. They're very, very different. So the whole calories in, calories out is completely erroneous. So just calorie counting is not going to help us in our obesity epidemic. Real food is going to help us. And so I wanted to share that with you. I think not only for ourselves, saving ourselves the agony of these various diseases that are associated with increased weight, but really looking to our children as well, and really trying to make a difference in them, because their obesity rate so dramatically increasing up to 50% is going to make for such an unhealthy next generation. It's scary, quite frankly. So look at these basics, kind of evaluate them in your own life. I didn't mention food sensitivities. They're really important as well. I mean, I mentioned GMO and highly chemical foods, but as far as food sensitivities, that's something to really look at as well. Gluten and dairy topping the charts on those two. So, but they're just some basics. I mean, you know, we went over a few things here, but we didn't go over, you know, 50 things. So kind of a handful of things that you look at and you can really make that difference and really start to shed the pounds, which makes, it's not just about how you look, it's about how you feel, and creating and avoiding degenerative disease and making the next generation healthier, which is so, so critical. So let me know your questions. I love to hear from you. And until next time, I wish you very good health.